Michael, does a compelling presentation to you look like from a university IP perspective?
So, all right, back up. The main issue, I mean, and it's actually no different than like a research company, right? I think it's actually just knowing what you have, right? So that we do have a lot of conversations with some universities, the same way we do large companies who say we have a lot of patents and we're sure there's something that's valuable in here, right? So why don't we work together and like when you find good stuff, we can work together. The problem is it's just so resource intensive that it's impossible, at least for us, to do that groundwork. In terms of, I mean, what makes it marketable is doing the groundwork. It's proving the infringement, right? It's proving it in a very detailed way, because when you have been doing this for a long time and you look at a claim chart, you just know when people are skipping steps, right? Where it's like just close enough isn't good enough, obviously. I mean, it's really doing the homework and proving out the infringement. Validity can be tough, but it's at least having a solid validity story, and which is I think more possible in the university context a lot of times because by nature you're doing early stage work, right? So if it's something that's been infringed, there's a good chance that it was from someone who was doing early stage work and it's kind of early in the ecosystem, and then actually spending some thoughtful time on figuring out with the metrics of the real world of patent damages and so forth what it could be worth, which is it can't just be it's $1 billion invention or it's worth many hundreds of millions, but some practical understanding of how damages works and what a range potentially of outcomes could be.
That diligence is focused on evidence of use, right? EOU. I used to use that terminology so often before I got to the university space, because that's the type of diligence we would do when we were going to go license a portfolio, because we were looking for current adoption and use of the technology, and we were trying to verify evidence of use. I even went as far as buying a car and then having that car being torn apart so that we could find out exactly what kind of gyroscopes they were using inside of that car. Right, that's digging into evidence of use, because I was trying to prove that they were actually using the gyroscope covered in the patents I was licensing already. Much different in university tech transfer partnering, where we're looking for evidence of prospective adoption. Right? So I'm digging into what they currently do, because I need to sell them on. This is something you need to do. We know you're not doing this yet. In fact, no one's doing this yet. But you need to be doing this, and here's why it fits in exactly to what you do already.
Now, Roger, what kind of assets are you seeing that have a particularly robust market these days?
Let me just jump back on this real quickly, and then I'll hit that. But this is too interesting to pass up. I think the when the work that I do is almost always for a company who's taking the technology and utilizing it. And a lot of these questions, and I think some of the discussion is about a portfolio or a sliver of a portfolio. How, was that valuable to invest in, or would that be something you could take to the market? When I'm looking at infringement, it's almost always a competitor with a similar product or in the same space, and we're not looking at going and getting a license, raising a bunch of revenue. We've got a product, and we now want to be more competitive by either stopping the infringement, stopping that party, making them remove a feature that makes the product less valuable to others. In some way, we're trying to diminish their product and make ours more valuable. So that's a lot of the infringement analysis that I'm looking at. It's not a hey, here's this portfolio, let's take all these patents and see what we can go and license them for. My clients very rarely want to license their patents. Now, there have been a couple of opportunities that I've looked at, and when Ian mentioned the paradigm shift, a couple of these were true paradigm shifts. They were phenomenal patents, but for a person who does what I do, it was sort of a pause, because I'm looking for infringement. I want to figure out who can we go assert this against. How can we get revenue for this great portfolio? And really at that stage, and I think this is where you all, it's very important that you pick the right either company or the right founder to go do that. That involves a whole series of things, going out to the market and really evangelizing the technology and doing product development and saying, here's this way you've been doing networking for the last 10 years, but guess what? This is going to make it 1,000 times faster, but you got to change your head ends and your satellites, and you've got to do all this stuff. So I quickly, as you can imagine, stepped out of that because I had nothing to bring there. But I think those are interesting topics, but they're very, very different than what I do.
Yeah. We take on the role of an investment bank, really. I mean, if you think about the role of an investment bank who leads an IPO, for example, right? You take your client out on a roadshow and you show off what your client's got to investors, but you have to identify the right people and set up the right meetings. But you have to do your homework and understand what your pitch meetings are going to sell and why you're selling, product A to company B. So that's kind of the role. If you think about the role of a tech transfer office, and when it comes to partnering or selling a license, it's not too different from the role of a transaction advisory firm or an investment bank for a client.